There's a place where the wind never stops, where the cliffs drop 1,000 feet into an ocean that has swallowed ships for centuries, where grass-roofed houses cling to the edge of the world like they're holding on for dear life. This is Slættanes, a village that time forgot, a settlement so isolated that the modern world simply passed it by. No one has lived here in nearly 60 years, but the houses remain, silent witnesses to a way of life that couldn't survive. This is the story of the people who built a life in one of Earth's most unforgiving places, and why they had to leave it behind. The Faroe Islands. 18 volcanic rocks scattered between Iceland and Norway, where Vikings once ruled, and sheep outnumber people 3-to-1. For over 1,000 years, people have carved lives from these cliffs. One man, one family, one stone house at a time. In 1835, a farmer named Hendrik Thomason looked at the northern coast of Vágar, a windswept plateau above brutal cliffs, and saw a possibility. He built the first house. Then another family came, then another. They dug turf from the hillside, cut timber from driftwood, and built homes that burrowed into the earth for protection from storms that could tear a roof clean off. They called it Slættanes. It belonged administratively to the larger village of Sandavalgor, but in reality it belonged to no one but the wind and the sea. There was no harbor, no road, just footpaths that disappeared in winter snow, and boat launches from beaches so steep you risked your life every time you pushed off into the Atlantic. This was home. For over a century, Slættanes survived. Not thrived, survived. By the late 1940s, the village reached its peak. 130 souls living in about 12 houses, farmers and fishermen, parents and children, all bound together by necessity. Every day was a negotiation with nature. The men fished from small boats launched directly into heavy surf. The women tended sheep on grazing land that threatened to blow you off the cliff if you weren't careful. Everyone worked. Everyone contributed. There was no store, no school, no doctor, no electricity for most of the village's existence. Children who wanted education had to walk for hours over muddy paths to reach the nearest school, or board with families in other villages, seeing their parents only on weekends if the weather allowed. When storms came, and storms always came, the village was completely cut off. No way in, no way out. Just the howling wind and the knowledge that you were utterly alone. But there was beauty, too. Community, resilience. On clear summer nights, the northern lights danced above the cliffs. Neighbors helped neighbors because there was no alternative. This was a life lived at the mercy of the elements. Hard, simple, real. But the world was changing. After World War II, the Faroe Islands began to modernize. Roads connected villages that had been isolated for centuries. Buses replaced boats. Cars replaced footpaths. Suddenly, villages with road access had schools that children could reach every day, shops with fresh goods, medical care, jobs beyond fishing and farming. But Slættanes had no road, and no road was coming. The village sat on a high plateau accessible only by a rough trail or by sea. Building a road would be monstrously expensive for a population that barely exceeded 100 people. The government made a calculation. Resources were limited. Other villages had priority. Slættanes would have to make do. The young people left first. They left for jobs in Tórshavn, the capital, for schools in larger towns, for lives where you could see a doctor without risking a boat journey in a storm, where you could get groceries without planning a day-long expedition. Their parents understood. How could they ask their children to stay, to live without electricity, without roads, without futures? One by one, families packed what they could carry. They closed doors that had stood open for generations. By 1960, the average population of Slættanes had dropped to about 70, then 50, then fewer. The sense of community that had sustained the village for 130 years began to fray. When your neighbor leaves, you lose more than company. You lose the shared labor that makes survival possible. Fewer people meant fewer hands to launch boats, fewer eyes watching for storms, fewer voices to break the silence of long winter nights. In 1965, the last residents of Slættanes walked down the path for the final time. They took their belongings, their memories, their stories. They left behind the houses, the stone walls, the graves of those who came before. The village didn't burn, it didn't collapse. It just stopped, frozen in time. For nearly 60 years, Slættanes has stood empty. The houses weather, the grass reclaims paths, the sea continues its endless assault on the cliffs. Today, Slættanes is a destination, a pilgrimage for those seeking to understand what life was like before roads, before electricity, before the modern world smoothed all the rough edges. Some houses are maintained as summer cabins now. Descendants of the original families return occasionally, keeping one foot in the past. But most stand empty, monuments to stubbornness and survival, to the generations who refused to let impossible odds dictate where they could build a life. The graves remain too, the ones who never left, who were born on the cliffs and buried in them, and who will watch over Slættanes long after the last house finally collapses. There are no specific ghost stories here, no haunted legends, just the eerie silence of a place that once rang with children's laughter and now echoes only with wind. Slættanes is one of dozens of abandoned villages scattered across the Faroe Islands. Each one tells the same story with different details: isolation, hardship, and the impossible choice between staying and surviving. The people of Slættanes didn't fail. They succeeded for 130 years in a place where success seemed impossible. But in the end, even the strongest community can't compete with roads and running water and the promise of an easier life. Slættanes, the village at the edge of the world, where life was hard, beautiful, and impossible to sustain.
The story of Slættanes reminds us that sometimes love isn't enough, that you can love a place with everything you have and still be forced to leave it behind. But here's what those empty houses really represent: human resilience. For 130 years, families raised children, celebrated weddings, buried their dead, and built lives in a place where nature fought them every single day. That's not failure. That's extraordinary. Thank you so much for watching this journey to one of the most remote and hauntingly beautiful places on Earth. If this story touched you, if it made you think about what we gain and lose as the world modernizes, please hit that like button. It truly helps keep these forgotten stories alive. And if you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our explorations of abandoned places, lost communities, and the incredible human stories behind them. Drop a comment below. I want to hear from you. Could you have lived in Slættanes? Would you have been one of the ones who stayed until the very end, or would you have left for an easier life? And if you know of other abandoned villages with incredible stories, share them below. I read every single comment, and your suggestions often become future videos. Before you go, check out the videos on screen. Thank you again for being here, for caring about these places and the people who once called them home. Without viewers like you, these stories would fade away completely, and that would be the real tragedy. Until next time, remember that every abandoned place was once someone's entire world.